Nathan strolled the streets that day without a purpose. He wanted to drink his way to nirvana after a further disagreement with his wife. The ongoing strain was too much for him to handle. Though they appeared so useless, the never-ending family disputes were driving Nathan insane despite his strong love for Astrid. He would remind her, "I've been suggesting for a long time that we adopt a child," whenever Astrid went into a frenzy over being a mother. Even though Nathan didn't intend to harm his wife, she always felt ridiculed by whatever he did. He even took home a stray cat, which caused conflict. Is this your way of hinting? When he took the cat home from the veterinarian, Astrid questioned accusingly. "Well, I suppose you're suggesting that we should at least have a pet because we are unable to have children. These days, people substitute animals for kids, and you seem okay with that. The fact that we are childless doesn't matter to you. When you feel like it, you'll probably just leave me or find a mistress. That's your strategy. It's quite practical for you. What are you talking about?" Nathan cried out in surprise. He would never consider abandoning Astrid since he loved her. Particularly recently, he was unable to comprehend what was going through her head. He tried to reason with her and calm her down, but it didn't work. Astrid could not respond to anything logically. At times, Nathan believed she had gone absolutely insane and needed to see a therapist, but he was scared to bring it up because he knew how she might react. Astrid might suffer a breakdown and move in with her mother, especially since she had threatened to do so once, given her fragile emotional state, which grew worse every day. Astrid yelled, "Maybe you don't even need me anymore," during their dispute. "Perhaps I should simply move in with my mother." Why not? We might both benefit from it. There is someone out there who can bear you children. Nathan was unable to comprehend the source of these awful ideas. Astrid had never had any cause to question him or his emotions. She was being destroyed by her obsession with not being able to conceive. Ursula, Astrid's mother, frequently reprimanded her for making trouble with her husband and didn't condone her actions. Ursula used to remark, "You have such a wonderful man. Additionally, you always start arguments with him." Not all men would tolerate this. You must confront reality. There is a lot of room for improvement in your character. He adores you very much. Of course, Ursula wouldn't refuse her daughter if she wanted to stay with her for a while. However, she tried to influence her and said, "This is unbearable. You're driving yourself to a nervous breakdown and making Nathan miserable." He said he's open to adopting. If you can't have children, you can give a chance to abandon children to have a normal life. Your family is well off. You have everything you need and more. Why not adopt a boy and a girl from an orphanage? You can raise them as your own and finally have the complete family you've always wanted. But Astrid refused to listen to any of it. Adopt children. The thought baffled her every time her mother and husband brought up the subject. It was beyond comprehension. She wanted to raise her own children, her own flesh and blood, not someone else's offspring with unknown origins. What if they turned out to be sick or worse, burdened with a terrible genetic legacy? What if their parents were alcoholics or addicts? She couldn't bear the thought of battling such a grim inheritance for the rest of her life. No, that was not her story. She was unable to do it. She yearned for her own child, one who would resemble her and Nathan. If it came down to it, she'd rather live childless than raise someone else's child. Nathan was at a loss. He had accompanied his wife to countless doctors, hoping for a positive outcome, but to no avail. Astrid had some health issues, and Nathan himself was no longer in the prime of his health, but none of this seemed to affect their ability to conceive. It was simply not meant to be, and there was nothing they could do about it. And while Nathan was ready to accept their fate, Astrid was not. Her emotional state worsened with each passing day, driving him to the brink of insanity. The man was willing to do anything to see his wife pregnant. But what could he do? Unfortunately, nothing. This sense of helplessness was overwhelming. On the day he decided to take a walk to clear his mind, he had another argument with his wife. Astrid, as had become her habit lately, threw a tantrum over nothing. Nathan couldn't even recall the reason. All he remembered was the barrage of insults and accusations that he could no longer endure. After listening to yet another round of unfounded complaints, Nathan rushed out of the house and went to the nearby park. He desperately needed to be alone, to breathe fresh air, and to gather his thoughts. Fortunately, the park was almost empty, except for a boy about 10 years old, who seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Sir, I apologize for disturbing you, but could you help me?" Nathan's first instinct was to brush him off. "I don't give alms, and I really don't have any cash with me." It took Nathan a few seconds to emerge from his deep thoughts and notice the boy still standing there. He realized that Jerry wouldn't leave until he got what he needed. Nathan reached into his pocket, but Jerry stopped him. "No, please," Jerry said with a bitter smile. "I don't want money. I need help carrying this bag. Could you help me?" Nathan was so lost in thought that he hadn't noticed the large sack next to the boy, clearly not filled with groceries, but something very heavy. Such bags were typically used on construction sites for hauling debris. Nathan wasn't far from the truth. The bag contained cement, at least 20 kilograms of it. "Where did you get this?" Nathan asked. "Why do you need so much?" "It's not for me," Jerry replied. "It needs to be taken to those cottages over there." Jerry pointed to a construction site beyond the park that had been under development for several months. Nathan himself had considered buying a house there. The location was good and not far from his current residence. But with all his family troubles, Nathan hadn't given much thought to real estate lately. He had put the idea on hold, so to speak. Lately, Nathan hadn't been wanting anything. He was disheartened by the feeling that his life was slowly falling apart. He often wondered why all this was happening to him, never considering that there were people in the world far worse off than him. People like Jerry, for example, who had endured more hardships than Nathan could imagine. Like many orphans, Jerry's life was far from easy. He didn't know whether it was better to live in an orphanage or with a stepfather who, despite living with his late mother for many years, never loved him. Douglas met Jerry's mother, Lilani, several years ago and wasn't bothered by the fact that she already had a son. Lilani was a promising partner with a good salary, her own place, and excellent homemaking skills. Douglas was confident that they would eventually have children of their own. But whenever he brought up the topic of having children together, Lilani responded positively, assuring him that once Jerry was a bit older, they would think about a child. However, years passed and the long-awaited pregnancy never came. Moreover, Lilani received a devastating diagnosis that left her in despair. Despite treatment, her condition did not improve, and about a year later, Jerry was left an orphan under Douglas's care. Of course, Douglas was sorry for his late wife. But life went on, and he needed to sort out his personal life. He became Jerry's guardian primarily for the apartment, not wanting such a good living space to go to waste. He had no need to rent an apartment, and by the time the boy reached adulthood, Douglas planned to have a substantial sum saved up, which would be very useful. Money was never in excess, and rent prices only increased each year. Besides, Jerry had no other choice. Where could he go? Except for Douglas, the boy had no one else. His grandmother had been in the grave for a long time, and his father, Jerry, did not even know him. His mother never told him about his father, and he didn't even bother to ask. He treated Douglas like a father, not even realizing that he could hardly tolerate him. The older Jerry became, the more often Douglas thought that it was time for the boy to move to self-sufficiency. When Douglas heard about the construction site, he immediately thought it would be a good idea to send Jerry there. He overheard a conversation in a local cafe while having lunch. One of the men was complaining to a friend about how his son had taken a part-time job there. The pay was meager, but the work was backbreaking. His son had injured his back and twisted his ankle and was now recovering. "I shouldn't have told him I wouldn't give him any more pocket money," the man lamented. He got angry and took the job for those meager pennies. Douglas decided to casually inquire about the construction site. The man looked quite strong, so his son was likely underage, and the context of the conversation suggested the same. This information was just what Douglas needed. After gathering all the details about the construction site, Douglas had a serious talk with Jerry that very evening. "You're a grown boy now," he began. "You should understand that money doesn't come easily to anyone, including me. You have to earn it. Do you understand what I'm saying? It will be mine when I grow up. We had enough money before." "Why isn't it enough now?" the boy exclaimed. "Well, it's not enough now," Douglas interrupted. "And for things to be like before, we need 2 people working in this family. Do you understand what I mean?" Jerry understood all too well. Despite his resistance, he had no choice but to agree with his stepfather. Before ending up at the construction site, Jerry had genuinely believed that nothing could be worse than living in an orphanage. However, he soon realized how wrong he was. The construction site was a nightmare. Jerry had taken the job to be a helper, but the foreman assigned him impossible tasks. "I can't carry this heavy bag," Jerry pleaded when the foreman first ordered him to move cement. "Maybe I can do something else." "What else are you good for?" the foreman sneered. "You can't lay bricks, and I can't trust you with serious work. You're only fit for grunt work, so get to it. If you don't want to or can't, then go home. But remember, your father won't be happy if you slack off." Jerry knew this all too well, so he silently took the heavy bag from where the foreman had indicated and struggled to drag it to the construction site. Fortunately, the bag was so tightly packed that he could drag it along the pavement without risking a tear. Jerry couldn't lift such a heavy load and didn't expect any help. But when he saw a solitary, thoughtful, sturdy man, he hoped for a miracle. Nathan couldn't refuse the boy. "I won't carry it myself," Nathan said with a smile. "But I have security. I'll call them and they'll take care of it." "Okay." "Wow, that would be wonderful," Jerry exclaimed, hardly believing his luck. He couldn't believe he had met a kind and compassionate person who cared about his plight. Nathan couldn't help but ask Jerry how he ended up in such a terrible job and where his parents were. He was shocked to hear the boy's story. "Your stepfather is a monster," Nathan exclaimed, genuinely feeling sorry for Jerry. He couldn't just leave the boy there or send him back to Douglas. So he invited Jerry to stay with him without even consulting his wife. For the first time, Nathan had decided without discussing it with Astrid. He brought a stranger into their home and presented her with a fact she complied but held her tongue, deciding to address the matter later. //. "Honey, we're both very hungry, aren't we, Jerry?" Nathan smiled, and the boy shyly nodded. Douglas had been feeding him meagerly, always citing a lack of money, which was clearly a lie. He had plenty, but refused to spend it on Jerry, eager to save as much as possible. His own gain was all that mattered. "Anyway, the kid's lucky because he met me." Nathan thought he was determined to help Jerry, starting with finding his biological father. Nathan understood that adopting Jerry himself was unlikely, as Astrid would never agree. She was clearly unhappy with the boy's presence and would never consider adopting almost a teenager when she didn't even want a baby. Nathan didn't expect her to agree, but informed her that Jerry would stay with them temporarily. He couldn't just throw the boy out onto the street, and returning him to Douglas was out of the question. Since Jerry had found himself in the care of good people, Nathan felt compelled to help. Surprisingly, Astrid didn't object. "What can I say?" she sighed. "Do what you want. It's your house, and you can bring home whoever you like, but there's one big problem. Douglas isn't Jerry's legal guardian. How do you plan to deal with him?" Nathan knew that such small matters couldn't be resolved amicably. Douglas only understood force, and Nathan saw no other way than to confront him with the support of his security team. If Douglas had been a reasonable man, Nathan might have talked to him, but as it stood, he saw only one solution. When Nathan arrived at Douglas's apartment, the neglectful stepfather tried to protest, but fell silent when Nathan threatened to report him for Jerry's working conditions. "Where did you come from anyway?" Douglas sneered. "Some kind of do-gooder." sticking your nose into other people's families. I can't help it, Nathan replied. It's how I was raised. My parents taught me not to ignore others' suffering. I couldn't stand by and watch how you treat the boy. How do you sleep at night? That's none of your business, Douglas snapped. What do you want from me? Do you want me to keep quiet about Jerry's disappearance? Fine, I will. What else do you want? Nathan saw no point in arguing with Douglas. He left without another word and returned home to find Astrid gone. He didn't bother calling her, knowing she had likely gone to her mother's to discuss the situation. Nathan understood her feelings, but wouldn't be swayed. Helping Jerry was a matter of principle to him. He hoped to find Jerry's biological father, thinking that even if the man had never seen his son, he wouldn't reject him. Perhaps he didn't even know of Jerry's existence and would be happy to learn about him. But soon Nathan discovered the truth about Jerry's father. He was filled with sadness and panic. Nathan now understood why the boy's mother had never spoken about him. He was a man who had hit rock bottom, a hopeless alcoholic incapable of caring for himself, let alone his son. His only concern was finding money for his next drink. Everything else was irrelevant. Faced with this harsh truth, Nathan found himself in an impossible situation. He felt concerned on one side for his wife, who would never accept Jerry, and on the other, his duty to a child who deserved a better future. Returning Jerry to his stepfather was out of the question. Nathan would never forgive himself. Sending him to an orphanage was equally unthinkable. He had already given the boy hope for a better life and couldn't take it away. After much thought, Nathan made what he believed was the most important decision of his life. He was a man of resolve, and once he set his mind on something, he saw it through. He informed Astrid of his decision as soon as she returned home. If you like, you can divorce me, he said heavily. We can prepare and file the necessary papers in the coming days. A single man won't be granted custody, Astrid retorted, to which Nathan merely smiled. With his wealth and influence, he knew he could provide for not just one child, but many. The authorities would be glad to see Jerry in such capable hands. Astrid had much to consider. Her mother had already set her straight, reminding her not to lose such a good husband over her foolish fears. You'd be a fool to lose him over this, she had said. This boy is a gift from God. Helping him won't bring you any harm, and who knows, maybe God will bless you with a child of your own afterward. Astrid understood she didn't want to lose her husband, which meant she had to accept Jerry and try to be a good mother to him. There was no other way. Over time, Astrid's feelings towards Jerry changed. The boy became truly dear to her, especially as her husband had been right. Jerry was kind, grateful, and obedient. Any mother would be proud to have such a son. Jerry knew that finding a family like this after all he had endured was a blessing he must cherish. His arrival forever changed the lives of Astrid and Nathan. God did bless them with a child of their own, a beautiful daughter they loved dearly. However, the birth was so complicated that Astrid barely survived. They decided not to risk anymore, and once their daughter grew older, they decided to give more children a chance at a better life. Throughout their lives, they saved many souls, taking in more than 5 children, all of whom grew into respectable individuals. None of Astrid's fears materialized. The children brought only joy and fulfillment to their lives. Nathan was overjoyed. After all their trials, they had become the large, loving family they had always dreamed of, putting an end to the unnecessary conflicts that had once plagued their relationship.